and welcome to my studio today. My name is Lonna and I am an acrylic artist, so thank you for stopping by to paint with me today. If you have not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you're notified every single time I post a video. Please like, share, and comment on my videos. I appreciate every single one of my subscribers, so thank you so much, everyone. So let's see what we're going to be painting today. We are going to paint this beautiful bouquet of tulips in this old metal watering can. I just thoroughly enjoyed painting this one. I love painting everything, so everything is like new to me every time I paint it. I'm like, wow, I just painted that. And I love the feeling of it. I love the calmingness of painting. And I hope that this brings out that in you as well. But this one was so peaceful to paint. Such delicate colors on it. We've got a matte metallic rose gold around it, which is just gorgeous. I love that paint. So if you guys are ready, let's turn around to my paint table and let's get started. Okay, so to get this surface ready to go, to get it right where I'm at right here, you are going to apply a coat of, oh, that's varnish, not that, multi-purpose sealer with a damp artist sponge to your surface. Let it dry and lightly sand it with an extra fine, ultra fine sanding pad or with a brown paper bag. That will get the job done just as well. Once it is dry, you're going to mix Snow White and a blush pink 3 to 1 to make a light pink. So this is a much lighter version than what the actual paint is. Okay? Your color may vary from mine just a little bit, but it's okay. This is just background stuff. And you want to apply it again with the damp artist sponge. Now, the reason, in case you don't know why I use my sponges damp, there's a couple of reasons. One is so that when you're done painting with it, it rinses out very easily. And two is because we want the paint to come off of the sponge, and if we haven't filled the sponge up with something first, like water, then the sponge is going to soak up the paint and then it's not going to release it as well. Therefore, it's best to fill this with water, wring it out completely. Even after you've wrung it out, squeeze it out in a paper towel. You just want it to be damp. And then when you go to apply your paint, it gives you nice, ultra smooth coats, and you don't have any bumps and ridges and thick paint anywhere. And then you take it to your sink and rinse it out. It comes clean very easily because we had that water in there first and it kept the sponge from absorbing the paint. Okay, so after you've got that done, I've gone ahead and my pattern is on here because I just drew it directly on my surface. Let me tell you a little bit about the surface. The surface is a arched plaque that I sell on my website, and it comes with 4 plaques and a base to stand them up on. So you could paint the 4 seasons on one side and then flip the surface over and paint some of your favorite things on the other opposite side. So it's got, you know, a dual purpose. And then it comes with this base that you can paint any color that you want, or you can stain it, and then they just slide right in there. I see mine fits very nicely, and I've already applied multi-purpose sealer on both sides and 2 coats of paint on this side, and I still have room. It doesn't fit so tight that I can't barely get it in there, that I'll be able to paint on that side, and it should fit just perfectly. So this set is available on my website, but you can paint it on any surface that you want. I just want to tell you about this surface in case you were wondering what it was or you were interested in it. Okay, so the next step we want to do is take our compass, and I do sell these compasses on my website. I'm going to measure out 1/4 of an inch. So that mark right there is 1/2 inch, and I want to go to that mark. So I'm going to take my compass to that mark right there. That's 1/4 of an inch. Now I need my pencil to not be as long as what this part is. We don't want them to be the same height because we have to allow for the thickness of the wood. So when we put our pencil down, this part should roll along the table edge so that the pencil rolls right on top of the surface. So we want to mark a line all the way around this. Make sure I'm still set on my mark right. All the way down, and then I'm going to take it out to the 1/2 inch mark and do it again. And I'm going to have to lower my, I don't have to move the pencil because this is a lead that moves. Because I'm farther out now, I've got to adjust my lead so that this can roll on the outside and this can still set on the top of the surface. I'm going to turn my piece here because I think it will make it a little bit easier for going around that corner. Oops. Okay, so now we've got this border line inside of here, and we want to paint inside of that line. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do, you can paint this by hand. Just grab a paintbrush and paint it by hand. We're going to go behind the handle here. I went through my handle, so we're going to go behind that. So I'm going to erase the line that's in the handle. I want to tape it off. Now there's a couple of tapes that you can use. This tape I do sell on my website. It is a stretchy tape, so you can stretch and pull and bend. It's what I'm going to use for up here on the inside and the outside edge. And you could use masking tape, but you'll have to cut it down to strips, and it doesn't have the give like this kind of tape does. So if you have some tape like this is the best kind to use. And then on my longer, straighter edges, I'm just going to use Scotch tape. So I'm going to tape this down. Just tear off a nice piece of it. And I'm going to start right here in this corner. I'm going to get my tape right up to that line. And I'm holding it down, and now I'm pulling the tape and putting it right on that line, because this tape will allow me to curve it and bend it and shape it. I'm going to go all the way around. And on this edge I'm going to come down just slightly. I'm going to have my other tape meet up with that. I can take it all the way down, but I don't want to waste this tape because it's not a curvy area, so I'm not going to use it there. So I'm going to take this piece and start applying it on this edge. And I made my pencil lines a little bit darker for your benefit, because you don't need to have, you just need them dark enough for you to be able to see them clearly. So after you paint, if you can still see some of your pencil line, go in there and erase it. And you could use a white charcoal pencil in your compass as well, if you would rather use that with it. So just pull this end and press down with the other hand, and then just work it all the way down. You want to make sure that it doesn't have any gaps. So you want to make sure it's stuck down really well. And then on the straighter edges, I'm just going to take some Scotch tape. Scotch tape is a painter's friend. It really gives you nice clean edges. So I will tape along each side. My piece, I'm probably going to have to wash it when I'm done because I drew this on. Some of the places I drew on with a pencil, and so I'm getting all kinds of pencil stuff all over my surface. So let me tape this side. And I really like using Scotch tape. It gives you a very nice, crisp, clean edge. Alright, we're all taped on here. I'm stuck to my paper, so I can't move it. We're going to take matte metallics. I'm going to grab me a piece of a makeup sponge. I use makeup sponges till there's not hardly anything left. I use this edge of it instead of the flat edge like that. I use the skinnier edge. You can use a stencil brush here, but usually when I have taped down edges I tend to use a makeup sponge. And this is a DecoArt Matte Metallics Rose Gold. I haven't used this color yet, so I'm excited to try it. It's very pretty. So I'm just going to take some with my makeup sponge. You don't want to get a whole lot of paint on your makeup sponge because they're not absorbent. And then I'm going to do a straight up and down pouncing. And I'm going to try and stay off of my handle there, so I'm going to go around it. You could take a piece of that green tape if you have it and tape around that handle if you're worried about it. And I'll probably put a couple of coats of this on here, maybe even 3. It depends on how I want it to look here. Oop, don't go past your tape. I got a lot of paint there on the edge of that sponge and about ready to push it off the edge there. Be aware of where your paint is at all times so you don't go past it. If you do, keep a damp brush handy and just clean that up. Clean it up really well. Ooh. I keep getting so much on that edge. That's crazy stuff there. Alright, go around my handle. You can see a little bit of the sheen there in the camera shot. Zoom in just a little bit there. I don't want to get you too close. See, I got off of my tape there. Alright, I'm going to clean that little bit of paint I got past there. I'll probably have to clean it again after I remove the tape. There's probably a little bit up underneath the tape on that edge because I didn't push this edge of it down. So I've got 2 coats on there. And I think 2 coats might work out well for me, so I'm going to remove the tape. And I will let this dry. So in my instructions it will have for you to do this step and then put your line drawing on, and that's the way you probably want to do it. That way you don't have to worry about getting it on the handle over there. But you do want the handle to go over, because I've got this off-centered. I don't have the flowers, they're not directly in the center. So you want to offset it just a little bit. See how crisp those lines are? So nice. So nice. Alright, I'll make sure I don't have paint on my hand anywhere. Take these outer ones off. This one, see if I have any places I need to clean up. If you mix paint for your background and you have some of it left, you might keep it in a small container. That way, if you have to touch up your background anywhere, you can do that. Okay, we need to get this dry, and then I'll go ahead and erase any of the lines that I didn't get paint over. And then we'll come back and start painting on our lovely design. Alright, we are going to start on our picture watering can here thing. And so I want to create a bluish gray color. So I've got blue chiffon and a lamp black on my palette. So I want to create a little bit of a gray blue, blue gray, however you want to say it. I'm going to go ahead and spritz the edge of my palette. I always spritz the outer edge of my palette out here with water. That's my clean water for floating or whatever I need it for. Because my water in my water basin gets dirty very quickly, and I don't want to be using that sometimes. So I'm going to take some blue. I'm going to pull some blue out down here. Blue chiffon, and I want to just sneak up on this black. So I'm going to add a little bit at a time in here and make this gray blue color. So it's just a tiny little bit of black in there. And we're going to base our picture in with this color. I'm going to be putting some white over this, kind of dry brushing over this. So we don't have to worry too much about how this particular coat looks on here. We just want to get a nice coat of paint on here. I'm going to mix a little bit more. A little bit of gray in there, or black in there, maybe just a scooch more. There we go. Go right up to your lines. You can go over them if you want to, but I generally go right up to them, and then I can come back and erase them later if I haven't gotten paint on them. If I've gotten paint on them, they're not going to come off. So I'm just using a 12 flat. This is a black silver Dynasty brush, number 4920. Love their brushes. They are now my new favorite brushes. Okay, I just got paint on that line, so that line will definitely have to be covered up with paint. Okay, I'm going to grab a round brush to paint the handle on. And we're only going to do one coat of this. I think one coat will be plenty. It's got almost a little bit of a purple tint to it because that pink is underneath it, which is perfectly fine. Paint in our handle here to mix a little bit more paint. Looks pretty good. The top and the bottom edge, well actually we need to paint, I'm going to mix a little bit darker color of that blue-gray. And I just added a tiny bit more black to it. So it's a darker gray. This is the inside. I don't know how much of this we'll see when we're done because I want to put some filler flowers in here. So we might not see any of this. But just in case, we'll just cover that up. And then the rim and down here at the bottom, we're going to paint in with lamp black. Now remember, these are all just our base coats, our undercoat, except for the black. The black is going to be the black. So, and I'm just making this picture up. I'm sure there's no picture in anywhere, or watering can, I keep calling it a picture, a watering can that probably looks anything like this one. So if you have a favorite one that you have at home, you could paint it to look like that one. And then the top, we're going to paint black. And we'll probably have to come in and touch this up later. So we want it obviously to be a little bit fatter in the front and then more narrow at the back because we're just seeing a little bit of it. Go around like that. Okay. We can put some of this around our spout, but we could also do this after. So, because we may have to come in and touch this up. Okay, so that is the watering can. We're going to move up and do some, I think we'll do the stems and the leaves first. All right, our stems, we're going to paint in with Hauser Light Green. Let me get it shook up because I haven't used this color for a while, so it's probably separated a little bit in the bottle. And I still have the really old labels on here. The new labels look like this. Mine is a much older label. So it went from, yeah, that's the same label. So mine's still the older label, but it's still a really good paint. Don't throw them out just because the label is different. So you're going to want a small round brush for this. And then really look at your line drawing. Your stems are obviously going to come from your flowers. I'm going to thin this down a little bit because it's a little thick. I generally always thin my paint down for base coats because the paint straight out of the bottle can be a little bit too thick. So we're going to come in here and find all of our stems and begin putting a coat of this on here. And we'll put a couple of coats on here. Just, it's probably easiest if you find your tulips. And then when we come in and add filler flowers later, we'll probably find some stems, create some stems for those. This one we can't really see the rest of that stem because we've got this big leaf coming here and then we've got two leaves here. This one is coming from right behind that tulip and then coming right here. And tulip stems are substantial, so don't make them thin, weak little stems. I mean, you don't want them ginormously fat, but you know, you want them to look like they're holding something up. Okay, for our leaves, I'll probably go to a little bit bigger round brush here. You could go to a filbert brush, whatever brush you feel comfortable with. We're going to paint our leaves in. Now I tried to draw my vein in where my leaves are so I don't get them confused with any kind of petal, because this is a petal off the tulip coming over here. This is a petal off of the tulip. It's not a leaf. Get this shook up. These are colors I have not used in a while. So this is Hauser Medium Green. It's just a shade up from the green that we have here. And I'm just going to get a little bit bigger round brush and see if this one will get the job done for me. I've got some water in my brush, so I'm mixing it in with my paint so that my paint stays a little bit on the thin side. So we've got this leaf here. This leaf is a turned leaf, but I'm going to paint this part in first. It goes down inside here. And then here's the turned part of it. Okay, and this one is behind that stem right there. So we have a little bit of the leaf here. And then on this side. So you should be able to tell the stem from the leaf because the colors should be a value different from each other. And then we have this really long one here. It goes behind this tulip and behind this tulip. And then it comes down into here. I could go up to a little bit bigger round brush, but I got some places here that are a little bit tight. Okay, there's that leaf. We got a piece of a leaf sticking up here. We'll go around this tulip. We have this one, it is a turned leaf. A little bit more water. My paint to flow a little bit easier. It's not wanting to come off of my brush. And we'll be applying 2 coats. I'll go off camera and put the second coat on mine, but we'll be applying 2 coats on all this stuff. Okay, and we have one more leaf over here. A little bit of water. If your paint's not coming off of your brush, you do not have enough water. It could possibly be out of paint as well, but most times it's because you need just a little bit of water mixed in with that. You could make this leaf go over the top of the handle if you want to, but I think I'm going to keep it behind. So that's the base coat for our leaves. Now for our tulips, I want to keep them that pink color that they are, but maybe just slightly darker. So we're going to take our blush pink and put a little bit of a wash of that on there. So to do that, I think I'll use my filbert brush. So I'm going to grab a little bit of this paint and bring it down here. And I've got water in my brush. I want more water. I want to keep this kind of transparent. And we can have it be kind of streaky on here if we want to. And I'm just going to wash a little bit of this in on each petal. You don't have to fill the whole petal. Just get a little bit on there. We've got more colors that we're going to be adding. And when I do my second coats on my leaves and my stems, I'm not going to apply a second coat, I don't think, on here. I'll see how it looks when it dries. But for now, I'm thinking I just want a very loose, washy color on here. Okay, very loose. Very washy, but just a slight variance from the background. Okay, I'm going to go off camera and get my second coats on here and get them dry so we can come back and start adding details on here. Okay, so I did change the color on my leaves, painted them in the same way, and my stems, because they were just, the colors were too close together, and I wanted the stems to stand out a little bit more. So I repainted my leaves in with leaf green, and then I took a tiny little bit of that leaf green and mixed it in with some olive green just to make it a little more opaque, but I didn't really want to change the color too much, and painted in the stems. So we're not going to go with the Hauser light and medium green. They were just, the colors were just too close together, and I really needed them to stand out alone. Okay, let's begin shading on our leaves. I'm going to shade on the big leaves with Hauser dark green. I really like this color because it's got a blue tint to it, and the leaf green has a little bit of blue in it as well. So we are going to use this color, and I want you to use whatever brush that you like. I am going to be using a chisel brush. It's got short bristles. You can use a flat brush, you can use an angle brush. It really, certainly whatever brush that you like is the one I want you to use. Corner load and work it into your brush. My brush has a little bit of water in it, so it's going to keep that paint nice and soft. A little bit more paint. I want it to be a little bit more opaque here. And we're just going to begin putting our shading in. So let me zoom you in just a little bit. I'll try and keep you on camera for this. So I want to start right here on this leaf. Now we've got a V or a triangle shape right there. So on those places I like to push the paint in there and then bring it out, round it out, and bring it out. That gives your piece a little bit more form and shape, and it doesn't make it look quite so flat and just a triangle. We'll go on each side of this. We'll go around this stem and this flower. Next to the stem, I'm up on the edge of my brush now because that's really narrow right there. But I've got that soft blend in my brush, so I can very easily put that in there without making it look like I just painted a solid line. Your palette, you should have spritzed somewhere on your palette some clean water. This side will have water, this side will have paint. Okay, we work it into our brush to get it to blend nicely together. I always touch my paper towel after I load to remove any excess. I think I might narrow this stem right here just a little bit, just by taking that shading color up into it, and then I created a little bit better shape for that stem. I'm going to go on the other side of it, and I'm up on the tip of it, up on the toe, the edge that has the paint, and I'm just staying right next to that stem, going all the way down, because there'll be just a little bit of a highlight right in that area. Okay, I also want to put some out here on this edge, the lower edge. And the same on this one up here. I want to put some a little bit on the lower edge here. Alright, I picked up a little bit of water, a little bit of paint. I'm going to work them both into my brush, touch my paper towel, remove excess. This is a turned edge on this sleeve right here. And this is a triangle. So I'm going to push some paint into that triangle and then pull it out a little bit, bringing it down just a little bit out of that triangle to give it that look of a folded area right there. We can put some of this back here, get a little bit more paint on this edge, a little bit of a shadow out there. Okay, we want to put some down here next to this, and just a little bit along right here. Just give a little bit of shape there. Alright, I'm going to load with paint and water and work them both into my brush, touch my paper towel. We're going to go up here. Now there's two triangles here, okay? So I'm going to push the paint into that triangle and then come over and push some paint into that triangle, and we'll work them both out. I'll come back and add some more on one of those edges in a minute. Okay, on this one here, I'm going to be really up on the tip, and I'm just going to scoot some of that paint. Remember, I have paint and water in my brush, so it's going to let that be a nice soft layering of color down in there and not a hard thick line. Pick up water and paint, work them into my brush, touch my paper towel. I'm going to get a little bit more paint. And we have another turned edge out here. So, which means we have another triangle. So I'm going to push just very gently. I kind of got my brush tilted up just a little bit, and I'm pushing that paint into that corner, and then I'm going to take the water edge and just kind of soften that out just a little bit. A little bit more paint. I removed a little bit too much of it with the water edge, and then kind of pull it out. And we can see that little fold there. I'm going to put a little bit of this out here, just back here on this corner a little bit. And then this edge will be a little bit darker right through here. Okay, we're creating some really nice shading here. Get a little bit of water, a little bit of paint, work them together, keeping it just on the corner of your brush there. Okay, so we've got some more triangles down here, or V's, however you want to see them. So push it in there, and then we're just going to pat it and walk it up a little bit. We're going to go around this petal here, so I'm kind of up. I have my brush tilted up a little bit. I think I'll just darken that whole edge right there, so let me grab a little bit more paint. And we'll keep that side maybe the lighter edge. Except for where it falls underneath this petal, so we'll put a little bit right next to that petal. Okay, and then this one here, we're going to go underneath this petal and up into that little area. It's almost a V. We'll kind of work it out a little bit. Grab a little bit more paint because I need to be up on the edge, and go around this flower here. A little bit more paint. I'm going to go beside this stem. Okay. I'm going to put some next to the handle. And I'm just taking the corner of the brush that has the paint, just pull it down just a little bit. Okay. We'll do the same thing up here. I'll zoom in just a little bit tighter. We're going to lay our paint in right here. I have my brush slightly tilted up, and now I'm just going to pull it out just a little bit. And we'll keep it darker on this edge. Just put a little bit up that edge and down here. Oops, I knew if I got you close up you wouldn't see what I was doing. Right along that edge on that one. Okay, let me wide angle back out. Okay, so that is our first shading on there. We also want to take this color while it's on our brush and create our veins in here. So I'm going to stay up on the edge of the tip of the brush just a little bit. I don't want this to get really fat. And it doesn't have to be extremely distinctive. So don't feel like you have to make it super dark. It's probably best that you don't. And we'll just take that one to there. And then this one will have one coming down. And a little bit of it will show here. So we'll put a little bit of it here. Okay, this one will continue through here. And we'll see just a little bit of it there. And, you know, we may end up not seeing that little bit at all once this is all done. But you can go ahead and put it in there. It will help guide you. A little bit out here. I'm taking the water edge and removing some of that. I don't want it to be that dark, that fat. I really don't want it to be fat. I'm not going to dip into my paint and load my brush anymore. I'm just going to load it right here where it's wet, because I I don't want a ton of paint on there, I just needed a little bit more. So I could come down this. And I'm not going to do that because it's so small. I don't think we'll see the vein in that area. And we've got one here. I'm just barely letting the brush kind of skim across there. Take your water edge and smooth out. This is very, very soft and subtle. Okay, this last leaf here, I'll put a little bit down here that we can see. Maybe just a scooch more paint. And then it's going to come around. And we may or may not see the vein coming down into that part of it, but you can add a little bit of it. So we're getting a little bit of detail here on there. I like those colors much better. I think that they, oops, wrong button. I think that they look much better with those stems. So we're going to get ready to highlight these now. I want to highlight with some olive green. I'm going to keep the same brush that I was using. Make sure I got my paint rinsed out of it. That dark color. And we're just going to create some highlights on here. Once we get everything else painted in, then we will come back and see where we need, because there will need to be a few darkening places on the leaves, but I'm going to hold that off until we get done. I want to go out here to this edge and just put a little bit on there. Now, olive green is pretty bright, and when you first put it on there, you're going to think, okay, not really sure about that one. Trust me, it will fade down in there, and you just won't notice it. A little bit right through there. We'll come out on this edge and put some. Try and fix the tip of this one. It's a little weird. I'm just kind of choppily doing it. I'm not, you know, trying to make it perfect. We want a little bit along there. And this one, get a little bit more water in my brush. This edge will get a little bit of a highlight. I would put a little bit of shading there, but I think I'm going to like the highlight a little bit better. I'm going to get highlight out here. We can bring a little bit on that edge right there. I'm not liking that one right there, so I am going to get a damp brush and dampen that. And then I'm going to take my white eraser here, this tri-eraser, and erase that back a little bit. You can do this if your paint hasn't cured. Once it's cured, you can't do it. I'm going to come back in, I think, with my Hauser or my leaf green, maybe. Mix that and take it down a little bit. Alright. This one here, I'll go along this edge. Remember, you have to have the paint in the water in your brush. They need to be blended so that they create this nice soft. Come right here and give a little bit of highlight on that edge. A little bit too much paint, so I'm going to grab some water, blend that in with my paint a little bit. And this one, let's highlight here, here. Okay, and I want a little bit of this. I don't have much paint left in my brush. On the opposite side of our vein, just a tiny little bit. Don't do a lot of this. I'm going to take the water edge and pull it out and thin it down. This is not very much paint, so, and it's got that water that's mixed in with it a little bit, so it's really going to fade down in there, and then we can come back in and add our brightest little highlight. I want to fix this leaf right here. So I'm going to take some of my base color, which is leaf green, and mix some of the olive green in it. Just right here in this one spot. If yours looks okay, then don't worry about doing it. But that's just too bright for me. I don't want it to be quite that bright. And that takes that down just a little bit. And again, with our highlights, we're going to come back in and brighten in a few places. Okay. Let's create a couple of brighter highlights on here. We're still going to just use the olive green. We're just going to add a second layer in a few places, like right here, and here. A little bit more paint here. And right there. Right along this edge. And that tip. You can do every place again if you want. Just remember to do less than you did before. That way you are not just creating this super great bright area. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. As far as our shading goes, there is just a couple of places I just want to put a little bit more of the Hauser dark green, and it's right through here to really separate those more. And then down through here, I'm just going to go ahead and go right over that stem, and I'll put a little bit through here. And then right through here. Remember, you're up on the very tippy toe there. And I think right in here that needs to be darker. Right through here needs to be a little bit darker. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave my leaves right there. So, shading with Hauser dark green, highlighting with olive green, and then you can brighten up a little bit on there if you need to. We may come back and add some of our pinks on our leaves. I haven't decided yet. Let's start working on the stems. Okay, let's see if we can shade our stems without causing them to blend in with our leaves. So I'm going to take the leaf green and a little bit of Hauser dark green and mix those together. Probably more leaf green than Hauser green. We'll see how this looks. I may have to go with an equal mix here. Right now we'll do 2 leaf green to 1 Hauser dark green. And we want to put a little bit of this right here where the stem touches the flower. So I'm just using the toe of the brush and kind of wiggling it a little bit and pulling it down. Just a little bit. You don't need to make this very wide or very dark. This one's probably a little bit too wide, so I'm going to use the water edge of my brush and take a little bit of that off. Alright, I want to take this same mix. We'll just do an equal mix here. I think I got any of that. Touch my paper towel down here at the base where they go behind something else. We want to put a little bit of this color. Touch my paper towel. I want to get the majority of the water and the paint out of my brush, so I just have a little bit of both in there. And then this one's kind of tucked behind there. And then right here. Now, if you can do this, let me see if I can remove a little bit of color right here. I don't want that completely filled in, although it's going to be hard because it's such a small area. Now, if you can do this, it would be great. If not, you can dampen it and grab a round brush or a detail liner and dampen the stem, and then just come along it with some paint on the edge. I have my brush flipped up, and I just want to go lightly along the edge of the stem. I don't have very much paint in my brush at all, so when I load it, I'm going to offload just a little bit on my paper towel. It's just going to blur that edge just a little bit. Okay, and I want to do it to the other side as well. This is where you got to really be up on the tip of your brush. You got to have just a little bit of paint and water in your brush, and just barely put it on there. We're going to come back and brighten the center of these, but we need just a tiny bit of this color on the edge, up on the very tip toe of this brush. I'm not putting a lot of paint on there, just a little bit. Oh, focus camera. There we go. Okay, I'm going to take a small round brush and we're going to add a little highlight in here. Let me get some white. We're going to add a little bit brighter highlight in here. So we're going to take our green, because this is the color that the stems are painted, and mix it with some white. So olive green and white. Make this really bright green, and we're just going to streak that down the centers. This one will get just a tiny bit. Okay, I'm going to wipe my brush out and maybe just pick up white this time, but it's going to blend a little bit with that paint that's still on my brush. And just create a bold little highlight in there. It'll all fade down in there, so I think I'll create a wash of this olive green. There's going to be mostly water. So I'm just tinting water here. I put some water on my palette here and got the tiniest little bit of olive green. So it's going to make this a sheer color. And I'm going to put this back over my stems. I want them to remain this olive green color. So just wash it right over there. We want to keep them bright. Okay, I think that'll finish our stems. Let's start on our tulips here. And the color I've chosen for these, we'll see how it works out, is Berry Cobbler. It's a yummy looking color. But you can certainly paint your tulips any color that you want. So I'm side loading for a float. I'm still using this same brush, so you use the brush that you like to use the most. We're going to put this color at the bottoms of our front petals. And I'm just kind of walking it up a little bit. I'm going to grab my mop brush and very gently tap onto that to blend it and kind of smooth it out. You use your mop brush dry. Take it to a damp place on your paper towel and clean it off. If you get it wet, you'll have to get another one. We use very light pressure when we use a mop brush. We don't get them too wild and carried away. You'll remove the paint if you give too much pressure. Alright, we're going to go around our petals here. We're keeping this color towards the center of the petals. The outside layer will be lighter, the outside edges. Remember, you work paint and water into your brush together. This is very soft pressure. If you've got that paint and water worked into your brush, then you're going to leave just an extremely nice soft float on there. If you get paint too far over on your brush, be sure and go wash it out. Alright, let's jump over to this one. And they're all going to be done the same way. I'm going to gently mop that one. I'm going to wipe my brush out a little bit because I think I got paint over just a tad too far. Reload. Touch my paper towel. Go in here. Now I've got my brush tilted up a little bit because this is a little bit tighter area here. And we just want to lay a little bit of color in there. That might be just a tad bit too much color right there, so soften that down a little bit, and then I'll repaint it in here in a second. Work a little bit more paint and water into my brush. A little bit more of the water mixed in with the paint, because that's going to keep the paint a nice soft color and keep it from being super dark. So if you let that paint blend with the water on your brush a little bit, then you can go right into painting with it. See, this one I want it to be, I can't tell which side my paint's on. I want it to be dark down here. I've got my brush tilted up and I'm just pulling the paint out on that edge of the brush. And then I want it to be next to the main petal. Take the water edge, I'm going to soften that and then soften it a little bit more with my mop brush. It's still not quite soft enough here. Okay, we're getting some really pretty soft color here. Work the paint and the water into your brush till they make this really soft color right here on your palette. If it's a really soft color here, that's how it's going to paint. Okay, because nothing changes from the time you go to your palette to your project. The only thing that changes is the pressure that you give on the brush. I mean, if you give a lot of pressure as you're painting this, it's going to lay down a lot of paint, and you want to try and keep that a little bit softer pressure. It's one of those V's, so we're going to make it just slightly darker in there. I want it to be a little bit of color back here on that edge out there where it's kind of folded over. Working some more water and paint. I pick them both up. I pick the water up on this side, the paint on this side, and I work them together on my brush right there on my palette. And however it looks right there, that's how it's going to paint for me. A little bit more down in here. Lightly mop that. Grab some water and some paint. Work that in. I might have to clean my brush out after I do this one because it's looks like it's starting to spread across my bristles a little bit. I'm up on the toe, and because I work that to a nice soft color in my brush, it's not leaving a whole lot of paint behind. Alright, this one I'm going to do the outside edge and the bottom. I'm definitely going to mop that. And then this one as well. Grab some paint and some water. I'm going to do it the same way out here on this outside edge. And I'm going to mop that, soften that just a little bit. We can come back and darken all of this. We just don't want to get wild and crazy with our first layer of paint, because then we don't have anywhere to go if we make it too dark. We don't have our values when we create our, you know, a little bit more depth with some darker colors, it's going to take a lot to get it there, and we don't want that to happen. Oops. Alright, definitely going to clean out my brush now because I got paint on the wrong side of it. So let me try this again, reloading. A little bit of paint, a little bit of water, blend them together, touch the paper towel. Start at the bottom and we just walk it up. Gently tap. That could use a little bit more color in it. So I'm going to get a little bit more paint and work it in. I want that to be just a little bit darker. I'm going right back over what I just put on. Normally you would not do that because you just lift paint. But I wanted to make that a little bit darker, and I knew I had a little bit of playtime there where it hadn't dried yet. And because I went through that, I got paint all the way across on my bristles. So again, wash out. I have water and paint in my brush. Touch my paper towel. Very gently, softly. We have soft color. We're giving soft strokes, soft pressure. Everything is soft. For some people, it's extremely easy to paint soft. For others, it is a struggle. If you're a heavy painter, it can be a little bit of a struggle to paint a little bit softer. I think I'll go along this outer edge here. I got the brush tilted up. We've got a V in there, so we'll have to make sure we come back and darken that. Alright, a little bit of paint, a little bit of water. Blend, blend, blend. Now there's all different kinds of tulips. So if you are a tulip lover and you know what you want your tulip to look like, then you can just have free reign there. Just be creative. Grab one of your favorite tulips out of your garden and have fun with it. A little bit down in there and then bring it up. I just have my brush tilted up here, just kind of pulling the paint up through there. They're looking very soft, very beautiful. Work a little bit more. Oops, that a little far. Wipe that out. Try that again. It got too far over on my brush, so I didn't want that. Down here. Walk that up just a little bit. Tap, tap, tap. A little bit more water. My paint was kind of dragging there. Oops. Wrong side of my brush. Happens when you use smaller brushes. It's hard to tell when you've got such a thin amount of paint on your brush. Sometimes it's hard to tell which side of the brush you have the paint on. But just go quickly, wash it out, and reload it. Okay, those are just beautiful little tulips. I'm loving them. I may not give them too much more color on there. I will darken up some places. There's obviously some places that definitely need to be darker, but I want this to dry so we can get a little bit darker value on here. Okay, we're going to add some thin little lines before we add a few darker places on here. So I'm taking my detail liner and I'm dipping it in water. I'm going to grab some berry cobbler and make an inky color out here. Almost a wash of this color. Okay, this is that berry cobbler. I'll wipe my brush off, especially that ferrule. We don't want anything rolling down. I'm going to load my brush and then touch it to my paper towel. And then we want to create some super fine little lines in here. So just tickle these through here. A little bit more paint on my brush here. These are super fine. We won't see them really back here on these other ones. So it's mostly the ones that are in front that you want to put these lines on. I want to make a few of them a little bit darker. You can leave these off if you don't want to have them on yours. This one here I am going to put some on because it's fairly noticeable. And then a little bit of water. This is very thin paint, very sheer. Don't get wild and crazy with this. Stay up on the very tip of your brush if you have your paint inky consistency. This will flow off very nicely off of your brush. Put a little bit in there. I think I'll put just a couple in that one. For me, it's easier if I can pull the lines towards me. I feel like I have a little bit more control and I can kind of flick them a little bit and make the ends of the lines fade away just a little bit more. This one out here, we'll put some on this one. Okay, just some nice thin little lines in there. I want just a couple darker ones in this one. Okay, I think that looks good enough. I don't want to overwork it and make it too crazy. Okay, so we've got our lines in there with our detail liner. Let's darken a few key places in here with this same color, this berry cobbler color. And we're still going to create that washy color on our brush, a little bit more sheer of a color. So right down in here, we definitely want it to be darker. A little bit down in here. I don't want to fill the whole petal, I'm just creating some dark little places. Okay, could be just a little bit darker down through here, and then we'll make it dark all the way down to the bottom. Okay, just slightly darker out here and down here. You want to make sure your lines are dry that you just put on there. Okay, so we made it just a little bit darker in a couple places on this one. Again, don't get carried away. We don't want to fill these petals. And we're not going over all of the areas that we did before. So on this one here, we're going to be darker right here. Grab just a tiny bit more paint with this one. Right there, it's going to be darker. And right here, okay, we'll make it just a little bit darker at the base down here. And then this is where you just want to pick a couple of places on here on your flower. Do not do everything, just a couple of places. So let's go over here to this one, and we're going to do a little bit at the very bottom. We want some right there. A little bit more paint on my brush. This is going to be a little dark area right there. Okay, we'll put some down here. And down here. And that's all we need. That's it, just a little bit. I'm going to go back over to this one. I need to put a little bit right there. And right there. Okay, we're looking pretty good here. Alright, let me grab some water. My brush is getting really dry here. Okay, this one over here, I'm going to turn this so I can paint on it easier. At the base of it, just right there. Then we're going to have a little bit in this V right there, and this little V area. I got a V right here. I want to darken that just a little bit. And we'll go around this edge just a little bit. Put a little bit down here at the bottom. Okay. Small amounts of paint. We're just working with very small amounts of paint. So you can see the 4 that we've done. We've still got 2 more. You see a massive difference between them. Alright. Second little bit down here at the bottom, just at the very bottom. Okay, we want a little bit at the bottom of this one, this V area right here, we just want it right in there, and then we're going to put some down here. Alright, one more flower, and then we'll be ready to add some highlights on here. So we want to do the base of it, just a little bit. Grab a little water here. Okay, so let me turn this. I want a little bit of this darker color in here, and right there. This is a little V area, so we'll put some right there. And a little bit right there, just a tiny bit, and then some right here. Okay, and then we have this petal that's right next to. So we're just going to put it right here, right next to that flower. And I'll put just a little bit on the edge out there. Let me wide angle out so you can see them all. Those are some very pretty tulips. So that was our second shading there. Okay, this is the point where you want to, if you haven't painted over all of your graphite lines, that you can go in and erase those away so we can get ready to add highlights. If you have painted over them, they're not going to come off, but I don't want you to worry about it because it's still going to be fine when we put our highlights on there. You'll cover those up. But if you, especially if you've got yours pretty dark, you want to try and take those back just a little bit. All right, we're going to put the lightest of highlights on here. And I'm going to take my white. I'm trying to decide if I want to mix it with the blush pink and create a light color similar to the background. No, I don't think I will. I think I'm going to go with white. So I'm going to side load white. I have a little bit of water in my brush. And this is really going to fade down in there after we apply it, which is what we want it to do. But we want to start forming our petals a little bit more with this highlight. So I'm going to go along the top here. I erased all of the lines that I could. Tippy top out here. So I'm going to, any lines that I have on here, I'm going to put a little bit of this white on there so it will push it back. This white's going to fade down in there, which is good. That's what we want it to do. Okay, so I've got one that's got a little bit of a highlight on it. We'll do this kind of like we did with our base color. Let me finish this one out where we put a little bit on, then we'll come back in just a few key places and apply some more. All the way out to my edge out there. And see how it's keeping the tulips nice and soft. Just very soft. We're just using very soft colors here. And again, this is going to fade down in there. Paint on my brush here. Shape that center one there a little bit better. I'm mostly doing the tips that I can see and a little bit of an outside edge if I can see the outside edge. I'm going to shape this one a little bit right there. This one I'm going to make light on that edge. They're looking so pretty. A little bit on that edge. just using the same brush. So if I need to tilt up in an area that is tight, then I'm definitely going to do that. Like these are kind of tight areas here. I don't want to go into my shading, so I'm keeping this out on the edges. Get my brush turned the right way here. Every time I pick up paint, I always go touch my paper towel so I can get the excess off the tip. If you get out into your shading, just take the damp edge and clean it up. You can do it very quickly that way. A little bit too much right there. Tip. And I'll put a little bit right in there. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Put a little bit along this edge. Keep it out of my shading down here. Just want it along that outer edge out there. Kind of smooth out the edge. Okay, so you've got your first pass of white on there. So we'll do a second one just like we did the deepening of the color, but we're going to do less. So we're going to have specific bright areas that we want to bring out. So let's do a few of those. We want a little bit brighter up here. Just a few spots. I'm pretty much using straight paint now. Not much water in my brush this time. These are the ones that you want to bring more forward. That will attract your eye a little bit quicker. So there shouldn't be too many places. We don't want, you know, to be confusing. I do need a little bit out here on this edge. Cover that pencil line a little bit more. Up here on the tip of this one and a little bit on the edges. this one. And a little bit right here. Oops. That needs to be just a bit brighter there. Okay, one more place I need a little bit right here to separate those two a little bit better. Take the water edge and thin it down just a tiny bit. Okay, I think those look pretty good. I'm not going to do any more to the tulips because I think they look very pretty. And we've got the bright areas that we need. Okay, I want to add some filler flowers in here, and I've settled on adding some white little daisy looking flowers. So I've got white here. I think I have a tiny little bit of blue of that color we put down here on the picture in my brush, but you can just go with straight white. And you want to add these in after you get the leaves and stuff done, because I want you to be able to take the tulips and paint them wherever you want to and know how to do it without the additional flowers on top. So that's why I do mine like this. I want you to be able to come back, because if you don't want to put any of these daisies in yours, you do not have to do that. So I am just going to add some of these in here. And I'm just using a small round brush. We'll put some centers in them in a minute. Right now I'm just trying to determine where I want them. I want those to be a little bit bigger. So those are some little ones down here. I like this bigger one up here, so I'm probably going to add a few more of the bigger ones in here. And after we get this painted, we can have one that kind of falls over the edge if you want. I think I'll have just one peeking out from back here. So I'll take a brush and clean that off of the leaf. And give it the look that it's back here behind everything. I do 4 on the top half and 4 on the bottom half. So if it's easier for you to put the center one in and then do 2, actually that's going to be 2 on one side, 1 on the other. You can do it that way. I think I'm going to come and put a few more in here, kind of hanging over the edge after we get this picture done. But I think I want to put maybe one peeking out from back here. I'll probably bring one over this way, coming out. going to put one up here. Okay, let's dot some centers in these. And I'm going to grab, yellow is not in our design, but I'm going to put some yellow in here. Some golden yellow, and I think I will put some of this on our leaves in a couple of places to brighten them up. So this is my designing process. I generally design right on camera, so I don't ever really quite know where my design is going to take me. I think I need to put another layer of white on this one. Just brighten them up just a little bit. White is just notorious for fading back into the project, which I never understood that when white is supposed to be a pretty opaque color. Just another quick little tapping in of some color here. And I think that's going to get our flowers bright enough. That may be all I add. I don't know. I'm going to have to wait till I get, you know, everything done here. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of leaf green out so I can mix it with my yellow here. So I'm going to take my golden yellow and a little bit of leaf green. Ooh, that's a lot of leaf green. Just want a tiny bit of green in there. Just mixing a little bit of green in there with it. And I'm going to tap some centers in here. And I'm going to grab my detail liner, take some of that leaf green, and any of the ones that I can tell where they are. I must add my, I'm going to add a stem in here. This doesn't have to be very dark. That's about the only places we can really see a stem. The other places, they're tucked in back there pretty good. I will bring this one kind of down through here to make it look like it's coming out from that point. And I want to tap just yellow on top of that. So I might mix a little white with that yellow. Get a little bit lighter yellow color. And we'll tap some of this color on here. You can make your centers green if you wanted to. Okay. We need to let the centers dry so that we can shade around them a little bit. I'm going to take some of this yellow. I'm going to take this mix that I have here, yellow with just a tiny little bit of leaf green in it. And I'm going to put this on a few places. just pick a few. We just want to bring some of that yellow in. And I think that's going to bring it together nicely. Bring some of that yellow in there. Let's see. I think our centers are just about dry here. I want to take some, well, I'm not sure. How's her leaf green might be too bright. So let's see what I can tone it down with. I might just actually tone it down with some burnt umber, because I'm thinking I might want to use some burnt umber down on the so let me put some burnt umber out. We also need to take a little bit of green up into our tulips. We don't have to. Goodness gracious, couldn't get it to come out, and then enough for 15 pieces came out. A little tiny bit of this leaf green. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of the berry. So when I mix them together, it's going to make this darker green color. It's like dirty green. I'll wipe a lot of that off of my brush, and we can put some of this next to the stems on the tulips. If we can see the stems, we want to put a little bit of this up on the tulip itself. Can't see that stem, but we'll put just a little bit on it. Okay, that looks pretty good. I like that. Okay, so for our centers here, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of green. I'd have just the smallest amount of paint here. We want it to be pretty sheer. We just don't want it to be that bright green. And we're going to put a little bit of this around the centers. I'm just doing it on one side. Don't let it take over your petals. If it comes out too far, take the water edge of your brush. Mine keeps coming out a little too far. Tilt your brush up, get up on the tip, and just kind of tap some in around that center. Get a little bit more on my brush here. The burnt umber with a little bit of the green in there. The burnt umber is a little bit more transparent. Goodness, I've never had paint be so difficult. Go and eat lunch and you come back and you can't paint. couple of these I need to make it just a scooch darker. And then I'll probably come back and add a little bit more white onto it. Alright, I lost a little bit of my petals here. So I'm going to grab my white. And just on some of these where they got a little bit too dark, or the brown came out farther than I wanted it to come out. Just stroke some of these. Needs another petal right there. A lot of paint on my brush right there. Okay, I'm going to take my little detail liner and dip into yellow and a little bit of green, and I'm going to tap maybe. Let's make them brown dots. I can't see those. Just tap some burnt umber dots in here. Hopefully some small ones, not ginormous ones. Ooh, that's a lot of paint. Just little tippy taps. If you have a favorite way you like to paint a daisy, then go right ahead and paint it. Or a filler flower that you particularly like. It can be any kind of flower. Okay, then we'll take a little bit of white and tap a highlight in the center. This may be 1 or 2 or 3 dots, depending on how big your center is. Just straight, thick paint, not thin down, of white. And that looks pretty good. Back here behind all this stuff, I'm going to make that a little bit darker, because that's the inside of the flower pot. So I'll mix a dark gray with my black and white. And back in here, I'm going to just tap a little bit of this dark gray. Close that up right there so we have no gaps. Okay, I think that finishes out the flowers. We're going to start working on the watering can. Okay, let's work on our watering can now. I want to drag white paint down our watering can, so I'm going to use several different size of brushes depending on the area. Probably even grab a round brush in some of the areas, or a filbert brush, whatever is going to work for me. But my brush is slightly damp, but you want to try and get a lot of the moisture out of it. And I'll put some fresh white out. And we're going to begin dragging some of this color down our... Okay, so I've loaded my brush up, and I just want to wipe, you know, some of it off, if not all of it off. Not all of it, but, you know, the thick part of it. And I'm just going to start pulling and dragging this down our watering can. I started out with smaller strokes here to begin with because I didn't really know how much paint was going to come off. So your first time out, lightly do it. Don't get carried away. Don't give a lot of pressure when you first start because you're not really sure what's going to happen here. Oops. Wipe a little bit of that off. And we're going to do this a few times because we want some areas of it to be really bright white and some areas to be not so much. And you can use just a regular, you know, dry brush if you like to, if you prefer to do your kind of dry brushing technique that way, then go for it. I want a lot more paint here. I'm going to put some on here. Grab a round brush or a filbert brush. I'll grab a filbert brush here for my handle. Oops. I'm going to try and age this up a little bit. Put some in here. I'm not going to worry if I get it on my black. Not an issue. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and wash this brush out because I don't want it setting with paint in it. And I'm going to go back to my flower or my watering can. I'm going to call it a flower pot or something. I knew when I started this one out I was going to be calling it the wrong thing. Just a few places. Alright, up the spout. Dry brush. And then I'll do the handle again. Okay, that's looking pretty good. I want to get this dry so that I can come in and start adding some rusty spots on here and some details and some shading. It's going to be adorable. We're going to make some little beginnings of some rusty areas in here. So to do that, I'm going to take a little bit of burnt umber, and I've got water in my brush, and I've just got a little bit of a wash of this color. Not a lot of paint, because we're just beginning our rusty areas. And you can put this wherever you think it will be appealing to the design. So I'm thinking there'll be some rust right in here. I'm just going to kind of smooth that out with my finger to soften it out a little bit. And there'll probably be some rust down here. And we don't want to do too many places. We'll put some here. And I think up here we might have one, just a little bit, like right along that edge there. And maybe a little bit at both ends of the handle. Seem appropriate. And I think that is plenty. We don't want to overdo our rusty areas. Okay, just a few on there. Do not cover your entire piece with rust. Okay, and I think I might put one out here on the handle. Okay, so we've got just a few rusty spots there. I'm going to just slightly darken them by going over them again, but I want to keep this darker closest to where, like this is going to be closest to that lip. This is going to be darker right there next to that lip. Maybe a little bit darker right there. Put a little bit more there because you can't really see it. There, right there. This is just the burnt umber. A little bit of water in here. A little bit right here. And a little bit right here. Okay, so we just added a slight little bit of that burnt umber. Okay. That's the beginnings of our rust. Let's take our black and some white and make a dark gray color. And we're going to put some dots on our spout here. I don't know how many dots will be on a watering can. Try and keep them close to the same size. That looks good enough for me. Maybe one here close to the edge. Okay, that looks like a good amount for a water spout. Okay, let's start adding some shading on here on our can. So I'm going to go to a 12 flat brush. I want you to use your favorite floating brush. Okay, that dark gray mixture that we mixed up. I'm going to side load some of that. And I've worked it into my brush a little bit so it's a nice sheer color. I might need to make it a little bit darker, but we'll start out with this color because I don't want to get too dark too quick. If you need to draw your line back in for your spout where it's at, then go ahead and do that. grab my mop brush, kind of smooth that choppy stuff out right there. Let's go on the handles. Get some more water spritzed on my palette here. Some on the end of each handle. Okay, I'm going to go up underneath this lip here. This is just that medium. I'd say this is more medium gray mix than a dark gray mix. So it's just the black and white mixed together. I'm going to go up each outer edge. I have to mix a little bit more here. A little bit more on my brush. Could be just slightly darker. Okay, up both edges. We'll bring that out a little bit more because we want it to look a little bit more rounded than that. But this is just a beginning here. Up each edge. A little bit of water. Grab my mop brush here because I definitely need to smooth some of that. Alright, I'm going to mix a little bit more, and I'm just dipping into my black, dipping into my white, mixing them, maybe just a tiny bit more white, making a gray value. Okay, a little water in my brush. That's going to soften that into my brush a little bit. Let's come along this thing. I need more water. We'll come along the bottom. And I'm going to mop that and smooth it out. I'll come along the inside here. Not worried about the black because I'm going to come back and touch that up. Probably make that a little bit more rusty down there. All right. Need a lot more water here. I'm just very softly bringing that up that edge. Now I'm taking my mop brush and I'm going to soften that down. We don't want any harsh lines here. And I think I'm going to take that off because I don't like that. So I'm going to take a damp brush and go across that gray I just put on. If a little bit of it stays on there, that's fine. Okay. I think I'll make that edge a little bit lighter. So let's bring some of this gray out a little bit. Mix a little more. I need to put some on the handle too, so if you have a hard time doing larger areas, floating down larger areas, you can take a damp brush and dampen the area. You can see it's got water on it. It's got quite a bit of water on it. So that, in that case, you want to have really no water in your brush, just paint. And we're going to walk this out. And then I'm going to mop all that choppy stuff there. And you can do this other side the same way. If it's too long of an area for you to work out, and then I'm going to very gently mop it because that's super wet. And then the same thing on this bottom edge. I want to definitely bring that out more. And this is the reason we put that burnt umber in first, so we could put this gray over it and work some of that gray into it. Alright, I'm going to do a little bit more here. And I'm going to come along on this edge of it. Staying up on the edge of my brush a little bit. Need a little bit more of this at the bottom down here. Okay, looks like we're getting somewhere with this now. Brush out. We're going to add a little bit more to our rusty areas. Alright, for our rusty places, we're going to take that burnt umber. I'm going to mix a tiny little bit of our berry cobbler in it. This is going to give it just a little bit of a reddish brown tint. And you saw that I had just a small amount of paint. And we're going to put some of this in our rusty areas. You don't have to go over the exact spot that you did. Just, you know, be close to it. We're just creating some layers here. And there was a little spot here. It's already been covered up, but we'll just put a little bit back in there. Okay, now that was with the mix with a little bit of of the berry cobbler in it. You can't tell a whole lot of difference, but it is just a subtle difference because the burnt umber is very kind of transparent. We're going to mix a soft black color, almost soft black. We're going to take our burnt umber and a little bit of black and create this soft black color. I might add a little bit of that berry cobbler in there. Give it almost a purplish color. And we want to put this like right next. I'm just going to tap a little bit of that out in some areas. But we mostly want to keep it like right on the edge. And then you can just kind of tap and bring some of that out. Let me mix a little bit more here. Burnt umber, a little bit of black, and a little bit of cobbler, berry cobbler. It makes a really nice color. I'm gonna keep it there, and then I'm just going to tap. I don't want that to get too carried away there. Okay, up here. There's so many ways that you can make rust on stuff. I've done several different ways. It really just depends on the look that you're going for. Alright, I'm going to go back and tap some darker spots and then tap it with my finger. Okay, that's looking good. Okay, let's deepen some of our shading now. So we're going to take some black. We're going to work it into our brush till it's a nice sheer color. You use your favorite floating brush, tap off onto your paper towel, and we're going to begin floating some of our darkest areas here. I'll have to switch to a different brush maybe. Come down this edge. My brush is wet. Don't want your mop brush to be wet when you use it. It's that looks pretty good there. Alright, let's deepen some other areas on here. Like right here, that's going to be a pretty dark area. I can bring a little bit of it kind of around this, but we don't want to do too much. Right here, be a little bit darker. Okay. We definitely want a little darker here. So mostly I'm concentrating on the little V areas, because those are where our dark colors are going to be. I'm going to put a little bit along underneath this lip here, so I'm kind of have my brush tilted up. I'm going to come back and paint that black in. This is a V area over here. Load a little bit more black in here. A little more water in my brush. Work that black in because you want that black to stay a soft color. And you don't want it to take over. So right down here. That can be just a little bit darker. Right there can be a little bit darker as well. Let's see where else we want to go with this black. We want to put some right here. Very narrow line. Right there. And down here, I think at the bottom, we'll make a little triangle of black right there. Alright, down here, let's put a little bit. And I want to come just above this lip a little bit, kind of like we did up there. Maybe not quite that far. Got another place I want to go here. Right down here. I just took the water edge of my brush there and kind of touched that back. I'm just going to put a little bit on the handle to kind of make the handle look a little dirty. Not quite so sparkling clean. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'm liking that. So let's add some highlights on here. On the spout here, before we add our highlights, let's just take some water and dampen that. Okay. Got it damp. Then I'm going to take my small round brush, or you can take a little liner brush, and this brush also is damp. You want to work while this is wet, and we're going to underline, maybe. I think I might take my detail liner. Make sure it's still wet here. And take your detail liner and put a little bit of black underneath these holes. I'm going to touch them back with my finger so they're not quite so dark. That one is super dark up there. I think I'm going to go back to my round and mix me up some more of that dark gray color. Or medium gray. Doesn't have to be exactly the same. I'm going to tap this back in here. I want a little bit of black at the bottom of these. So if I'm seeing a little bit too much black, then I'm just going to tap that on there. These holes are not going to be very pretty, but they're not our focal point. Then we'll take some straight white and tap a little highlight on some of these. Okay, we want to add our highlight on here now, and we're going to use Snow White. I'm going to get some fresh paint out. And grab your favorite floating brush. And on the spout arm, we're not going to go directly on the top. We're going to go away from the edge just a little bit. Soften that down. Create a little bit of a highlight there. Just a little bit on the edge here. Oh, can't get the paint to come off my brush here. I don't want that to be super big. I'm going to wipe most of the paint off my brush and do just a little bit of a highlight in here. Alright, where else do we want this highlight? I'm going to put just a little bit right there. Clean up a little bit of that edge. I want this in the center here, so I'm just going to kind of drag some of this in here. You can go back to your, well, this is the brush I used for dry brushing, and put some of this right here in the center. Probably do this a couple of times. And I want to put some on the top of the handle. This is just straight white. I'll have to repeat it because, like I said, that white just fades away into nothing. And I'll put a little bit here. And I'm not going to put it anywhere else on there. I'm going to touch up my black. That is along the everything. Grab my smaller round here. Clean up with a damp brush. Need this to be a little bit more rounded out here. Okay, I just want that to be a nice shape, so go down here to my bottom edge. And this wasn't painted on very straight, so I'm going to get it a little bit straighter. Touch it up. And then up here at the top, okay, just touch it up. Just be careful going around your flowers, but if you get paint on it, let it dry. Remove it if you can, but if you can't, let it dry and then repaint your flowers in. Okay, now I want to add a highlight down here of a light gray, light to medium gray. So I'm just going to mix that up, and I'm just going to drag it across down here. Drag it across here. And put it on here. Create a little bit of a highlight here. Okay, that was just with that gray mix. It's a medium gray mix with the black and the white. Okay, and then I just lightly let the brush drag across there so it wouldn't leave very much paint at all. And I want to create a little bit brighter on that highlight. So I washed my brush out. Now I'm just going to get white and load some white on my brush. I don't want to have any moisture in my brush, so if I have some in there, I'm going to remove it. Touch my paper towel so it takes off some of the paint, and then we'll just put a little bit of white on here. You just want to remember you don't want to do as much of this as your previous color. And then I'm going to go back and brighten my highlight on my handle. I'm using straight paint here, no water in my brush. I mean, my brush is damp because you need it damp to paint with it, but no water. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. Let's wide angle out. We got a few finishing touches to do here. What a pretty bouquet for spring. I am loving this so much. So much. All right. What do you think about putting some of that metallic? Not really sure where we could put it because it's a rose gold metallic. We could put some on our flowers, but I don't think I want to put any on our flowers. So let me think about it. Let's take a little mix of burnt umber and a little bit of black, and we're going to push all this stuff back behind this edge of this. So the watering can seems more forward and that seems more pushed back. So I want to float a little bit underneath this watering can, and I think I'm going to use a mix of the burnt umber, a little bit of black, and a little bit of the berry cobbler. Don't get too much black. I mean, that black will take over everything. We'll just make this it's almost a reddish brown color here. Get the moisture out of my brush. And we'll just side load for a float here. And put this underneath. Wipe some of that off. And just bring it out and kind of tap it. And if you've got it in the stand, a lot of this you won't see. Just a little bit of shading under here. We don't have to do a whole lot. A little bit darker here. I think that looks pretty nice. Now I'm trying to decide if I want to shade inside our area here and push that banding back a little bit. If I do, I'm going to do it with the same color. So this is where it will be optional for you. If you do not want to do this to yours, or you've just painted it on something else and didn't even add the gold, then don't worry about it. I would kind of like to bring that gold in somewhere. Maybe I'll tap a little bit of it into the center of my flowers. So just tap at the bottom of each center. This will give a little bit of sparkle and shine up here. You don't need too much, so don't get carried away. Just a couple little dots. And we'll just kind of bring that into the design a little bit. You could thin some down with some water and make a wash of it. And put that on a couple of random petals. Give them a little bit of sparkle. You could put some on the leaves. That would be so pretty. And just give them a little bit of shimmer. This is another totally optional step. But if you're going to put it on some petals, be very precise on that petal. Don't get off of something onto something else, because it will definitely show up. So I'm just going to pick a petal off of each one and put some on it. And so we've got a little bit of that sparkly gold stuff coming into it. It's still wet, so you can't see a ton of it. I think I'll take a little bit of this and just put a little bit of on our flower pot. It's not going to hurt. Or watering can. Told you I'd be calling it a flower pot. I'm going to keep it more in the areas that were kind of dark. So that's how we can bring that metallic look through the whole thing. So the last option is to possibly shade around our border. Not quite sure if I want to do that. Okay, I've decided I'm quite happy with this design and how it looks. I just think it is soft and just so, I don't know, just so, it's just a soft look, and that's the look I was going for, and I just think it turned out gorgeous. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed painting this with me. I hope that you will paint it, and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Like, subscribe, share, comment. I appreciate every single one of you. Thanks so much for stopping by and painting with me, everybody. I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.